Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Paris Liftoff Film Festival Audience Choice Winners Roundtable. I'm Claire, and this is Hugh.
Hello, everyone.
And we're so excited to be joined by three filmmakers from the festival. We have Theodore, Lee, and Raúl joining us from different corners of the world. And we're going to dive deep into the films that were so popular during the festival, learn a little bit more about those, but also importantly, we want to hear more about these filmmakers and the sort of creative journey that they've been on so far, and also looking at career aspirations, which I think is always interesting to hear and learn from as well. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you guys. Theodore, if we start with you, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Theodore Gimeno. I am 20 years old. I'm a film student at the University of Warwick in the UK. I'm originally French slash American, so I have that dual citizenship. And I've been going to school and finishing my university time in the UK for now.
Fantastic. And just introduce the film that we're talking about today.
Yeah, so the film I made is a feature film called Les Paroles du Soir. It's in French, but the English title is The Evening Word. It's a film about a young man in his apartment in France who becomes confronted with memories of the past, and more specifically, memories of a past relationship. It's a short, it's a closed door film, so everything is shot in the apartment, and that was the main factor of the film.
Amazing, thank you. Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Williamson. I'm Scottish, living in Ireland. I directed and produced a short documentary called Snámh. It's only 3 minutes long, so I always end up talking for longer than the film is.
We'll definitely be doing that today.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. What else would you like to know? The film is centred around Colm Daly. He's a 70-year-old Irish swimming veteran. He's been in the Irish waters for 50 years, and he has a fairly emotional human message that transpires not just swimming but over to everyday life, kind of like a village elder passing on his wisdom.
Amazing. And Raúl.
Oh, hello everyone. My name is Raúl Rodríguez, and I'm the writer and director of Albatross. I'm from Mexico City, and I'm calling from Mexico City. Albatross is mainly about the relationship between a father and a son, and what happens after the father is gone, and how that changes, the prospects of life of our main character, and how he meets one person that could clearly change, his pathway and his future, at least. So that's mainly what the short film's about.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, it's also worth saying that for anybody watching, so hello to Sagar and hello to the other person in the chat who I won't even attempt to pronounce your name because I'll do terribly, but thank you so much for joining us. As always, the point of these is that they are interactive. That's why we do them live. So if you're listening to these filmmakers and you've got any questions for them, do just fire away in the live chat and we will pass your questions on and get them answered. But yeah, what we're going to do now is we're going to screen the three films muted in the background behind us as we dive more into them to find out a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Theodore. So that film is going to start now, and we're going to watch the opening of it as we find out more. So firstly, Theodore, tell us, was this your first feature project?
Yeah, this was my first feature project. It wasn't supposed to be a feature project. I raised money through a GoFundMe page, and having received enough for the funding, I then went and shot exactly what I had in mind to shoot. And then when I finished shooting it after 5 days, it only took 5 days, I realized I had a feature film on hand. So I used it, and I didn't try and cut it short. I thought that was exactly what I wanted. So I said, okay, let me try and see what I could do with this amount of duration and this amount of film. And it turns out it fit in a feature film.
funding is always an interesting point of discussion with filmmakers that we meet here at Liftoff. How was that process for you, especially as a first-time filmmaker and not expecting to make a feature? How did it go?
It's actually easier than you think. I don't know if this is the popular opinion. There's I proposed this dossier at my university when I was in my first year, so this was in 2019, and I proposed this project to make, and I was accepted. They gave me a grant to do it, which was fantastic. But because of COVID, that stopped. They just paused the project and said you couldn't do it. So that was kind of always put on the side, and I was very frustrated because I had a story that was kind of inspiring to me and I wanted to pursue. And so since this film was shot, the evening when it was shot in 2020, it's just me saying, okay, well, now I don't have that grant anymore. They're not following me because no one is following anyone during COVID. What could I do? And I said, well, I'm just going to try and raise this money on my own and see how I can do it. And I did not raise the money I wanted to raise. I just raised whatever I did. And then with that, I made the film regardless. And that's why I then cut short and chose one location, one character. It was very simple. I just used it practically.
You've been smart there. It's one of the things we always say at Liftoff. When you're looking at a low budget production, you've got to optimize that micro budget. So for what you can achieve rather than doing something a bit too ambitious, not very well. And you've nailed those things straight away. Location, one of the first things. Minimize those unit moves and all the set dressing and everything like that.
I think sometimes budget is just a number, really, isn't it? And, it doesn't matter how big or small, you can still make something really good out of it. It's just about how you kind of channel each aspect of the budget. Yeah,
especially when it's so low, it then asks you to reflect on how you're going to allocate that budget. I think so much of it is lost. A lot of the money you get is lost in things. Whereas if you do kind of focus on story, if you focus on performance, and you try and put that budget in ways that audience members won't understand where you put that money. They won't see that, but you will know, oh, you know what, I spent 2-3 hours talking about this and that and spend that amount of money to advance kind of a more important factor of the story, not just equipment. Like, that's what I think about. Money, equipment, it's like, no, you can do that, but sometimes money can be lost.
Can you come and do a budget workshop with us at some point, maybe, and if you pass all this on for us?
Yeah, for sure. I like what you're saying, though. Another sort of one of our kind of like buzz phrases at Liftoff is putting talent before technology. So we really like to award the things that are free to get right. So that's imagination, the storytelling, the creativity, the performances, and the writing, which are all things that you can do really well on zero budget, and then the rest comes afterwards. So yeah, love all those things you're saying. So speaking of performances, let's talk about your leads. So originally you thought you were shooting a short. So how did you go about casting, and then how did you then go about scheduling and getting these actors locked down for the feature? Although, as you said, only a 5-day shoot.
Yeah. So a good question. The lead character is my best friend. He's not an actor. He's doing a degree in landscaping, and he's been my best friend for a long time. And so we've talked about films and communicated about it. And I just saw in his aesthetic, in his face, and how he moved, and I've known him for so long that I could work with that. Nice. And that my job would be to try and get at the performance out of him. I'm very, very inspired by the French New Wave, and even if you go further down the line back to Italian neorealism and how they used non-actors for actors, because there's so much life in people and there's so much innate performance in how we live, and that was also a challenge. I told myself I'd rather know the people I'm working with, trust them on different planes, and then, you know what, if we fail, we fail, but if we succeed, it's interesting. It's very interesting to push.
I'd say that definitely good filmmakers can know, like if they're casting non-actors in lead roles, they can tell when there's that spark that they can do it regardless. Because, in the past I've seen films where they've cast non-actors in the leads and they are terrible. Certainly was not the case here, obviously, you know.
We talk about this a lot in Lift Off, don't we? Sort of like the use of non-actors versus actors, and it can work really, really well. It's worked really well in famous examples like American Honey and others, but it can also be a film's downfall. So it's always something we say be careful of, because ultimately an actor is an artist and they're a trained professional, but there can be something really special drawn out of a non-actor as well. So you said you wanted to work with someone you knew, so you sort of saw that as a real positive. But do you think it also made it difficult, and you'll now have an easier job on your next projects when you are working with professionals?
Totally. It's there's some pros, there's some cons.
Yeah.
But the job was for me to make this happen ultimately on every aspect of the film.
Yeah.
So is it funding? Is it performance? Is it location? Whatever I have now, my job is to do my homework to figure it out, and that's actually my that's what I'm most proud of. So, and of course, I think projecting myself later down the line, having had that experience, if I am to come to work with professional actors, people, you know, have that exercise and practice this rigorously, that will bring another dimension to it, which, you know, will show me why it is important to have professional actors in this world too.
Yeah. And this is something we'll talk to Lee about, because obviously with documentary, you're not filming actors. And Raúl will speak to you about this as well and hear if you were working with trained actors or not. But yeah, I think this is interesting. So Cigar in the chat room has asked you, Theodore, have you taken shots in one take? So tell us a little bit about the cinematography.
That's totally my philosophy. I want the one take. I mean, if you mean
Nice.
one take as in the whole scene is shot in one take, yes. Taking multiple takes of the same kind of take. Yeah. But yes, it's definitely something that allows you to actually dramatize a lot. It seems, I think, as an assumption that you de-dramatize when you film for a long time because things become normal, or you can see the mundanity in the life. But I find that it dramatizes it, because if you orchestrate mise en scène, if you focus on certain angles, if you design the cinematography, then you become you starting to do cinema. Like, this is when you start to give in perception, perspective, and so totally long take is like, it's my go-to. I love long takes. If I can, I'll make people move. I'll make dialogues, you know, bring the conversation to another space, but I'll just do one take, because I find that very, very freeing.
Nice. We're seeing it more and more in the films that come into us. I think it's becoming more and more popular.
It definitely helps capture that sort of, you mentioned the French New Wave, something you're a really big fan of. And yeah, I guess the story in itself, was there anywhere in particular that this idea and these characters germinated from? You know, the things you were exploring in the film, sort of, you know, this is like the early like stages of the project. How did it come about?
Totally. I think I'd be lying if I wouldn't put some sourcing in autobiographical events. I've lived some things that then are retranscribed in the film. If I was to reference a film, you probably all know Contempt by Jean-Luc Godard, which is Le Mépris. There's this very, very, I think if you watch that film and then you watch mine, there's some parallels. It's just a fascinating film about a woman's contempt for a man, and it's a bigger story, I think, about just humanity and relationship, and obviously very, very inspiring to me. So I guess that would be my first thought if I was to reference the film anywhere.
I'll have to stick the one on the list, definitely.
Yeah.
I like it because it's, you know, so French in its way. And I remember when you joined us for the focus group during the festival, the other filmmakers that we were speaking to loved this. And one of them, if you remember, grew up in Paris. And so he just absolutely adored your film. And he just said, you know, it gives me like very nostalgic feelings because of the way it's shot and its style, which is so cool.
Definitely. No, I really, really connected with him about that. And I think that was my only goal. I'm not into realism as such. It's not really that. It's more it's more like this mystical idea of like a memory and retranscribing. That's the real interest in cinema for me. How can you make people see themselves through the film? Not really, but see life, and then through life they can understand, I don't know, meaning or purpose for themselves. And that's, it's so special. I think that's why we make films. It's so special.
No, for sure. Now I've now just got that thing in my head, like, does life imitate art or art imitates life? Like that whole conversation. Yeah, amazing. So what are you working on at the moment?
So
What's next?
I'm working on, so obviously I'm still at university. I'm still a film student. So I'm working on classes and essays. But next to that, for a film project, I am actually shooting another feature film in December. So we are in December. So in 15 days, I'm shooting another feature film in the south of France and in the north of Spain over not 5 days, but 6 days this time.
6 days in 2 different countries.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about the story, or how you've come about creating a shooting schedule for a 6-day feature shoot?
Yeah. Story. Let me think about how I could. So it's 2 stories in one film, parallel, and they don't have a narrative thread that link them together. But obviously, I feel like there's something there. I haven't maybe even understood why I want to talk about these 2 stories together.
Thematically similar, maybe.
Yeah, I think maybe, because the first story kind of is based on my great-grandfather's. He's Spanish. I'm from Spanish descent, and he was he traveled across the Pyrenees after the Francoist kind of era to declare himself a political refugee and seek asylum for his family, and spent 3 days hiding and walking through the mountains to become French. So that's my Frenchhood, and that is the first story. And the second one is about 2 brothers who come back to visit their old house, and as they come to their old house, they meet with a figure that claims to be death. That's it.
Okay.
Ooh, interesting. I'm sold.
And are you self-shooting this?
Yeah, I'm directing it. So I wrote it and directing it. I have a cinematographer.
And editing?
I'd like to stop editing. I'd like to work with someone, because people are probably better than me, and a lot of men and women do this for a job. But eventually, yeah, I think I want to have some control over it. Obviously.
Sure. Editing is definitely one of those ones where we say, if you can get an external person to come in and do that, it just removes that attachment.
Yeah.
And you're not the one sitting there thinking, well, I know how much that shot cost, or I know that shot took 4 hours and it ruined our whole day to get, so I'm now not taking it out. Whereas an editor's going to come in and go, no, it doesn't work. It ruins the pacing, for example.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a good one to bring in an external person if possible. But it's also a great skill to learn, and I think editing your own work only improves you as a filmmaker, even if you then get to the point where you're ready to step away and not edit your work, if that makes sense.
You can definitely work both ways, for sure.
You have to do it all, honestly. I think that's the real message, because it's a craft, and you have to know maybe why you're not going to do those things eventually. So if you have to do the sound for a friend's film, you got to do it. If you got to do the lighting, you got to do it. These things, sometimes I've even acted, and in this next one I'm going to act.
Okay.
I've done a few things before, but this is also a challenge. I've never acted. I love performance. Let's try it out.
Nice. Okay, so this is like the sort of immediate future. What is the big goal? Like, what does success look like to you, if you have to define it?
Success would be doing this my whole life. If I could just do this, I don't think it's a point. I don't think it's a stationary arrival destination. It's more so if I could keep on doing this and sustain a livelihood, and obviously eventually have a family, and feel like art is important, and regardless of if life imitates art or art imitates life, some of us are really into and passionate about it, and it needs to be kept up. And cinema needs to be, I don't want to say saved, but I want to say saved in many ways. And I think we need to all work towards that. That's my goal.
Just keep that heart beating, for sure. Definitely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're certainly luckily preaching to the choir here. I don't think anyone on this call, or hopefully anybody watching, I think we all agree that, there's so much importance in film, and it just enriches everybody's life and society. And we can't let cinemas go. That's for
beautiful.
sure.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Amazing. Well, Theodore, thank you so much for speaking. Lee or Raúl, did you have any thoughts, feelings, questions for Theodore?
I mean, I'm actually kind of amazed that that it kind of, a short film went to become a feature film.
Right,
I mean, that's amazing. And because actually my goal in the not too distant future is to actually do a short film, a feature film. Sorry.
Amazing.
So so it's and the fact that you're doing another one right now, I mean, it's mind blowing. So congratulations.
Thank you. I wonder if a lot of it does deal with me being unconscious about it and not using the format as a limitation.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it ended up being a feature film, but before it was 35 minutes or 40 minutes, or it could have been 20 or 15 minutes. And working, I think, backwards, using limitations as a way to create is great, because that's how you do anything. That's how you produce it. But not having it stop you. So if you say, I want to do a long take and shoot for 8 minutes and understand the meaning of that, then do it, and then make a 43-minute film, even though you can't fit it anywhere. It's like, sometimes that I feel maybe we cut ourselves because of the formats, because of where we're going to upload them, because of what festivals ask from you. No,
that's very true. And you've spoken about, obviously, like festival requirements and like the kind of ideal durations for that. But it's true, if that's not necessarily your absolute be all or end all, then just make what works for you. But to be clear, for festivals, if you're looking for festival screenings with a short, ideally you want to we usually say the general rule of thumb is 7 to 16 minutes. Anywhere in that is a real golden spot for shorts. And then obviously you've got features as well.
And you'll always find places, I think, right? Like these festivals, there's many festivals that are super inclusive with these new requirements and rules. I don't think there's any rules. That's it. For creating, there's no rules. Obviously, for distributing, they are, but not for creating.
Very true. It's a good distinction. Okay, well, thank you so much. And can you tell people, because we're about to switch over, if they want to see the Evening Word, is it still on the festival circuit, or where can people go to watch this?
Yeah, so it's still in the festival circuit a little bit, but I am dying to release it for people to watch it. And honestly, I've had a YouTube channel for a while, and I kind of feel like just uploading it to YouTube and calling it
so the answer is stay tuned, and it will be on YouTube soon.
Totally. Yeah.
Amazing.
I want to do that.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're just now
When I swim
up. So Lee, over to you. Tell us, how did this start? Because I love the reason that this came into being. Something positive coming from a negative situation. And speaking of restrictions, absolute restrictions.
Yeah, in Ireland, when the lockdown happened, we were restricted by 2 kilometers. That was it. So a mile and a half. It wouldn't even get me to my local shop, because we live kind of in the country. So the shop was illegal.
Oh God.
So I know. So we had to be like ninjas, guerrilla shopping. But gonzo shopping. The drone I have would go further, obviously. The swimmer, my old friend, he said he would swim further. So we would both break our laws in our own ways. So we shot it locally. He lives a couple of doors up. All the scenic shots are just literally over the trees of my back door. So all the views in that film are local. The garage scene is right underneath my feet in the garage downstairs. We tried to make everything as, well, I mean, obviously I had €1,500 to make this. And that was just my time and my equipment and editing afterwards. I really thought, what would it cost me without making a profit to do this? And that's what I whittled it down to. Everything else was people donating their time and their energy. And with Colm, he wanted to leave a message behind for his children who are older. And I was wanting to make it to leave something behind for my children that are their babies. They're just two little girls, 1 and 3. So, yeah, we shot it. Well, I met Colm, first of all. Can I tell the story about how we met?
Yeah, please.
I'm a photographer, first off. The filmmaker thing is very new to me. I'm in awe of you two guys already. I've seen your films and I'm like, I shouldn't be sat here just listening to you and taking notes, especially Theodore there. I was trying to remember as much as possible, especially with budgets. So I set up the camera on a misty morning in Ireland next to the boats in the marina, the same marina that's in the film. I couldn't really see anything, but I could hear everything fairly well. And I heard a scream. I turned around and it was 2 old men, pensioners, in the water in just their pants. So I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? This is January. You can see some of the shots in there. That was January. The water temperature was about 4 to 6 degrees Celsius.
God.
Yeah, I know, they're crazy. So I heard a scream and I thought I should investigate and see if it's intentional or if it was an accident. So I waited for a minute or two and it seemed like they were in control. So I let them go for their swim, come back, and I gave them some photographs, exchanged emails, and then we started filming Colm over the space of 2 years to get the stock footage. And then after that, the closer stuff was all during lockdown. And then I edited it during lockdown and then entered it into Film Freeway through projects, and then Liftoff took over. Really, you guys.
Amazing.
It all just kind of came together really over time. I mean, I was remarking on this when I was talking about another documentary earlier today, is sometimes you just meet someone and the first thing that goes up in your head, that little light bulb says, I'd love to make a documentary about you because you're just that enthralling and interesting. And it's such a specific activity or hobby. Like I've never met like an open water swimmer before, so it must have been such a wow. It's how do you go out there and do this, especially in temperatures like that? Gosh,
with no clothes, it's just this little piece of, and they go out and they swim, and there's actually more textile in the plastic buoy that floats behind them. But yeah, they're amazing. At the time, I got talking to Colm and he was training for the ice mile. So that's a mile over 40 minutes in sub 5 degrees Celsius temperatures.
Oh, God.
Right. So he was training, and because he's 70, or he was 69 at the time, almost 70 at the time, he would have been the world record holder as the oldest male ice swimmer. So that's what he was going for. He attempted to swim. He did it within the 40 minutes. He completed it, no problems, healthy. But the temperature rose 2 degrees as he was swimming. So it was disqualified.
Joking.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Oh.
And he's only, at that time of his life, at this time of his life, he's only getting older. So it's getting harder.
Yeah, of course.
But he says the world record will be easier because there'll be less people 1 year on from now of his age group. He's very hardy. He's very Irish. It took a long time to get them talking. It took a good solid hour and a half in the garage of me constantly asking the same question. He was talking about everybody else and their achievements, but I wanted to know what he felt, what he thought about when he swam, because that's the human element of it. It is very specific. It's very niche. It's crazy. But he does it, and the message he has really can, as I said before, transcend into every discipline in life, and maybe even life itself. It's a nice message, and about community engagement, safety and numbers, mental health and well-being. And certainly we needed to make this film because we were as tight as the restriction was. We needed to express something. We were angry, we were scared, there was a lot of fear. So we needed to make something very human just to lift ourselves up. And then hopefully, and so far we've been reaching out, and it seems that it's been lifting up other people too. And it's been doing well in the festivals. I mean, it's for such a short film. it has had a good impact.
Well, speaking of restrictions again, there's a question in the chat room, which is, did you use the drone shots purely out of requirements, or was it sort of part of the vision? Because, I mean, the thing is, you've said that it was obviously the restrictions because your drone could go further without breaking any rules. You know, the police can't arrest your drone, although maybe they...
Unless they catch it, yeah.
Unless they catch it.
I shouldn't be saying this on public.
but for the vision, it works so well as well because there's such beautiful landscape imagery, which drones just always capture so well. And it looks also so high production value.
Just the over-the-top shots when Colm is swimming as the drone is following him. Yeah, it's just...
Well, they were lockdown shots. The nice autumnal where the light just hit perfectly. Obviously, I saw that light before the lockdown happened. I saw that shot, and then it was just I had to get outside. Like the back door is right there. I can put the drone up off my balcony, fly over to the marina, and it's all good. So the drone shots, that's a requirement. It was both requirement and vision.
Well, that's amazing then, because it comes together so perfectly.
Just married up really nicely, for sure.
One of the things I want to pick up on what you were saying before, because I think it's so interesting when people are looking to do documentary making, or equally like Theodore was talking about with non-actors, how it takes time to loosen someone up and how as a director you have to work with them.
I think especially with documentaries, because, you know...
documentaries, it's really hard, you know. I think people might think that they're going to find it really easy, but as soon as a camera and a light is actually put in front of them, it can be so tough. And
I worked on one that like overwent its production schedule, and I think even the producer said to me, the guy we're filming, he's absolutely sick to the back teeth of us by the end of it is the thing. And I get
there's an element of that too, yeah.
But I think
I do commercials for my business as well, and I've had a few situations where I have to interview the producer of, say, you know, it could be anything from whiskey to fit bathroom pods. You know, it really is quite diverse. But the same elements apply. People that are not trained with media, trained with being in front of a camera, or even, you know, just without visual, just even talking into a microphone. If they're not trained, it's hard. And a trained actor as well will be, you know, they'll have the muscles there to do it. They'll have the endurance to last and be asked the same question and not show fatigue or sound fatigued.
Yeah.
So you really need to try and get your question. Even it challenges a person like myself. If I was interviewing someone just to film the answers, it challenges you as an interviewer to make sure you're asking the right question to get the most value back without tiring the person that you're talking to.
It's such an underrated skill, because I think everyone likes to think they could do it. You know, we watch people like Louis Theroux on the TV and everyone's like, it's a dream job and I'd love to interview all these people. But actually it is a serious skill to be good at it. And I think you nailed it on the head. It's how do you ask a question to get the best response back without it having to become wooden, because you have to revisit it again and again, because you don't want it sounding stilted. There's nothing worse in a documentary where they sound like they're just sort of revising an answer. You want to get that authenticity coming through.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The authenticity. With Colm, I was like, you know, I'd like to start off, say your name. Well, you know, I don't have to say my name. They know who I am. I was like, no, they won't. I was like, the community knows who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you've taught maybe 1,000 people how to swim, but over and above that, you know, who are you? You're just the beardy old guy. What's your name? My name is Colm Daly. And I was like, that sounds quite angry. What's your name? My name is Colm Daly and I'm from Dublin. I was like, right, now you sound, you know, despondent. What's your name? My name is Colm Matthew Anthony Joseph. You know, it goes on and on. But it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And then when I broke him in the interview, I hope he doesn't watch this later. He was like, I was like, what do you think about when you swim? Oh, you know, there's this one time this guy, he won an Ironman and that was fantastic. No, stop. What do you think about when you swim? You know, sometimes when I go to the shop and I'm like, Colm, what do you think about when you swim? When I swim, my mind often wanders, and that's the hook. That's the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And it just goes on from there. And he just locks into that like he's swimming himself. And even though he's surrounded by people, he's ultimately by himself. And although we were in a community and we had people, we were still isolated. We were by ourselves. So it just went. So I don't know what I would work on next. And if I was to do that similar film the same way, I don't think I would get the same magic. I think I'd be years trying to find just that one subject, that one muse that you would go again. I think I'd have to change genres again. Still documentary, but documentary still, but just a different approach.
Yeah, that's cool though. Well, one other quick question from Cigar in the chat room is, did you storyboard the drone shots?
No, nothing was storyboarded. I had a vague idea of how I wanted the thing to look, but it was only in the editing room afterwards that it all came together, and that I was able to say, no, this doesn't need to be any longer than, it doesn't need to be 15, 20 minutes. I can do this in 3.
Yeah, amazing.
I wanted to get a quick punch in there because it's Colm. He's an athlete. He's used to swimming, time, get it done, finish. And me, I was testing myself with my equipment. Can I get this done quick? Doing the commercials, you get maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes.
I was just going to say it's your
anything over
background.
3 and you've lost the audience.
Yeah.
Like, people don't have the attention span when you're doing commercials anyway. So I wanted this to have the same kind of pop song time, but just really get the punch in. So storyboard, no, I don't know how I would storyboard a 3-minute short film like that again. It just seemed to flow when I was editing, and we just cut the fat, and that was for the drone shots. Just took too much.
No, it's funny that you draw the comparisons, because I straight away was thinking, well, there's your commercial background. When you're doing commercial work, you can be more brutal because and you have to be. But no, it's so effective, and we love this documentary. I think you've done an amazing job.
Thank you.
So what is next away from the commercial work? You said you think you'll stay in documentary but switch genre. Any ideas, anything in the pipeline? The
angle comes from the way it has to be funded, because I've got to think about what I need to make something. I need to make my bills get paid, feed my girls. Yeah. So I've got to think about how I mix my work and my art, I suppose, together to make it all work for each other. So it comes back to funding. I want to go to Hollywood for that screening for the Sessions Prize.
Yep.
And in order to get there, I've got to think smart. How can I make... That's the carrot, yeah, exactly it. So I've got to think about how to make the business work so that I can get the money to pay for Hollywood, but how do I get the funding? Do I pay for it myself, or do I get the Arts Council to fund it, and maybe I make something for them? So that's the angle. I think I'm going to make a documentary on our journey from lockdown to Hollywood, and then try and get the council on board to try and help me fund this, the Arts Council and the local council, to try and help fund this to get there. So I think that's the angle, and that's the story that needs to be told, because then we can educate other filmmakers that maybe think this is out of reach. So, well, it's not out of reach. I was under a really strict restriction with very little money, because I wasn't sure if I need to save my money. I don't know when COVID is going to stop. Will I have a job at the end of it? So everything had to be economical, not just money. So there really is the local, my college, Griffith College, they picked up on the story as well, and they've been using it as an example to help sell their film courses. Because really anyone can do this as long as they have the drive, the story, and a little bit of ambition just to make it work. Like Theodore was saying, he was micro budget, a short film became a feature. I love that. I almost swore. Theodore's story, it makes me passionate, because it's like you started something that grew into something else. The organic nature of it is surely why we're doing this in the first place. We're looking to tell stories, but it ends up becoming a bigger story as you're making it. Yeah. So I really want to do I think that's the next part, the documentary on how we got to Hollywood from lockdown.
Well, that sounds great, and it's such a smart way of thinking, like going from the funding to. In fact, for anyone watching this, it's always a good idea to look at what funding bodies are available, because some of them have very specific niches or slants that you need to put on something. And if you therefore are looking at those in advance, you're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole, you can sort of adapt your material depending. And for Raúl and Theodore, this might be different in your countries, or at the moment, Theodore in the UK, but certainly in the UK, the funding schemes do have specific things they're looking for. So you'll want to be ticking those boxes. Yeah. Well, Lee, thank you so much for talking to us about this. Did anyone have any questions for Lee, Theodore, or Raúl? Thank you for the questions in the chat room there.
I had one after. Raúl, you go, please.
Okay. I'm just wondering. It's a 3-minute documentary, right? So I'm guessing that you
definitely had an hour and a half of Colm in the garage. And he's in it maybe for a few seconds in the garage scene, and then his voice takes you through the rest of it. The shots themselves, I certainly could have let them hang for longer. like that autumn shot. Claire was saying earlier about having that one shot and being the editor as well as the guy that, the director editor, to step back. Well, I couldn't let go of that shot, but at the same time with the commercial background, I knew I had to chop it, and that broke my heart because that autumn sunlight shot, and it's a face melter. I really like it anyway. I still have plenty of stock footage, longer versions of what's there already, but I had
Amazing.
a good few hours of footage there just to bring down into 3 minutes.
Director's cut.
Oh, yeah, for me too, for talking too long.
I had a question, Lee, about what essentially you find very inspiring in documentary, in the format. Why documentary?
It's not scripted. It's, I suppose, as real as you're going to get. I like the authenticity of characters like Colm, because when you really strip them down, you're getting a core element of what it is to be a human being, because it's not easy. It's not, a walk in the park. There's definitely a different feel. Like you used your friend who has this genuine feel about him. Now, I watched your film, but I couldn't understand it because I don't speak French, and there wasn't subtitles hard-coded.
Yeah, there's supposed to be subtitles, unfortunately.
I watched it all the way through, and it was helpful though, because it meant I just watched him, and I got the expression of his face without knowing the language. I was able to know what he was thinking about and what he was saying. So there was an authenticity there that didn't need any. It was just kind of, this sounds cliche, but it just kind of broke the barriers of language. I got everything I needed to from his face.
But because your video, I was about to say your film is documentary on paper, but so much of it is cinema in my mind.
Sure.
A lot of it is very, very cinema because of what you just defined, because of how you positioned it feels Colin to speak and what you actually got from that conversation and what you used. It's, for me, that's storytelling at its best. And so it can only be cinema or documentary regardless, but it's that thing that I'm driven by, that I feel Raúl is driven by, and that we're all driven by.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lee. What we're now going to do is go over and we're going to have Albatross on. So, Raúl, talk us through this. Where did the very first idea for it come from?
Well, this is my film thesis. I had to do this for film school.
Amazing.
And ever since the beginning of the course, they tell you that at the end of this you need to make a short film.
Yep.
So there were times where I didn't have there were a lot of things that I was interested about, but I wasn't confident enough to talk about personal stuff or something like that. But that evolved over time, and I realized that I was quite invested in films that talked about father-son relationships or mother and son relationships, and so I decided to talk about that. And at first, Albatross was going to be a much more. It was definitely going to be a father-son relationship, but it was going to be a lot more visceral, a lot more violent. Like a father versus son relationship, where they're put against each other in a violent way. And it, and interestingly enough, it kind of went through that, and I realized that it wasn't going to work because personally a lot of things changed. So I drifted towards much more, I want to say meaningful, but I'm not sure is the right word. Where it's a much more complex father and son relationship, where one presence is off the picture. What happens when the son is left alone, and he has to reconsider a lot of things, that his decisions, his path on life, he has to reconsider it. So that's basically what it is. And after I had that settled, I had to, build the character of the son. What type of son is he? And he's a kind of broken person where basically he has after his father's gone, he realizes that he has never had a proper desire for himself. He basically denied his father, but he did everything because of him. So he realizes that he's kind of lost after his father's gone, even though he had a rocky relationship with him. So it's basically that.
I mean, the thing is, these are all such relatable themes that I just think film is the perfect place to explore. I love films like this. And even in recent years, several come to mind where you are really exploring those characters' relationships. And I think what you said is so true. Like, the more subtle version of that often comes away being more interesting than something you might originally think you need that high drama, or you said you want the clashing. But
Exactly.
often it comes up so much more, back to the word authentic. So how long did it take you to write the script?
Not a lot. I mean, ever since I defined the theme, I remember that I first built the characters. I first defined. I like to do the character's biography before I do the script. Because that's how I like to do my process like that, and then I used it with my process with the actors. But the script, it took I remember like 3 weeks.
Okay.
And but I remember that it was much more about the second part of the film. It was going to be about boy meets girl, and then maybe fall in love and everything. But I decided against that because I think it would be too predictable. A lot of people that saw the films tell me that I thought they were going to fall in love, or they were going to a hotel or something, after they meet on the therapy session. But I thought it was too predictable and too on the nose. So I thought it was going to be a much more meaningful relationship if it was something very small but personal between them.
Yeah.
So that was a major change on the script.
It's interesting that that people said, my initial impression was that they were going to end up together. When I was watching it, it never really crossed my mind, because I think considering the topic that is, covered from the start of the film, the way I saw it, it's just one of those extraordinary situations where even if it's just for a day or for a minute, sometimes you just come across people and you just share something meaningful, and then suddenly they disappear from your lives completely. I think it's probably happened to all of us at least once. So you might not even realize it. I'm kind of surprised that people saw it that way, because I think it's the relationship is opened, introduced. I think to the extent where you don't I think in lots of these things it's very easy to tell, like from the minute that you introduce a male and a female character, they're going to get together. I think it all depends on that crucial first meeting. And I think you did a really good job of, completely avoiding that cliche, if I may say so.
Thank you. And at the end of the day, it didn't fit. The first part of the short and the second part, it was never going to work.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you very much find the story during the process, or it kind of finds you. And I think it's interesting that you noted. So there is very much a school of thought of kind of building the story around the characters rather than the characters around the story. There's a great article I read by one of my lecturers in the Journal of Screenwriting that covered something like that. It's a process I'm all for. I think formulas are there, like story formulas, and they're good, but it's really nice as a writer to kind of just sit down and let the characters speak to you without sort of following a strict path or formula, if that kind of makes sense. And it sounds like that's where this story came from, clearly.
And that was my approach exactly, because if you see the first sequence, that first sequence is against every short film rule. It's a very slow, contemplative
Yeah.
sequence where I've always thought about it as a father's death sequence, where it was, easier for me to, get an old actor and, get him collapsed to the ground, or, see him die in front of our eyes, But I thought it was much more powerful in the sense of the absence.
Yeah.
If there's no body, there's no physicality to it. And that was my whole approach to that scene. I mean, I remember that my producer told me that, which is one of my best friends, told me that, this would be a great film, a great short film if we cut that first sequence. And I knew he had a point. He had you're right, but it kind of loses something. It loses.
I'm not surprised that Theodore is saying that, because I was just about to jump in being like, Theodore's already spoken about tearing up the rule book for filmmaking.
I shot the first scene in my film is like yours. It's the absence. There's nothing there. It's so strong. I find personally in your film, it's absolutely so strong. It's stunning.
There you go.
Stunning.
Thank you.
Just a group of rule breakers here. I love it.
Yeah. Rebels.
Lee, that includes you too, by the way.
Oh, I know.
One of the questions before we move on from the germination of the story is, if you don't mind them asking then, did you draw on personal experiences and memories with your own father?
Not on my own father. I mean, it definitely has its root on my relationship with my father. But I realized that after I realized that when I was shooting it, that it was much more about my fear of what would I become.
Nice.
I mean, I think that the main character is it could be me in 30 years, and that was my fear, that I would be doing things that, maybe I'm a filmmaker because of some other person, not because of me, or, stuff like that. I'm not my own proper person. So that I think that deep down it kind of was born because of that unconscious fear that I have of what could I become.
It's such a strange film to bring up, completely shifting gears, but there's a line in The Breakfast Club where I think one of the characters says, one way or another, we all grow up to be our parents. And I think, it kind of speaks to that inner anxiety in all of us, is that, do we really have our own agencies, or are we just essentially replicas of our parents? I think,
exactly.
It's probably something that's crossed our minds, at any point in our lives. You might just get that sudden, oh gosh. Totally.
Well, a question that I didn't ask the others, but I always am interested to hear. You said you want to go on and create feature film work, which is, very, very normal, of course. What do you think is the biggest lesson you took from making this film that you'll take forwards?
I think it would be that I think I can relate to theater in this way, because in relation to the budget. I think that everything at the end resolves itself. I mean, you stress a lot about, if anything wrong happens, and that sets back everything. But at the end of the day, I mean, obviously a lot of things can go wrong, but it's kind of in your power to, and I'm not talking about, if it rains or, something you can't control, but I mean power in the sense of that you can creatively find another solution.
If I can jump in, because I understand what you mean so much.
Yeah.
I think the wrong memo is you can do anything. That's not true. The whole point is that you can't do anything.
Exactly.
You can't do everything.
And so sometimes the limitations are good.
And that's how you create. That's how you produce. The fact you can't do anything means that you have to. It's a survival thing. You have to.
Exactly.
And then you start talking about the real stuff. And you're talking about fears and stuff. I think films are fears or desires. They're the representations of that, the things that are in us. that are so scary to talk about. You have to make a film and create metaphors about it.
I love that. And actually, similar to what we've said before, or something that Natalie and I heard when we were talking about micro budgets, again, just to go back to how you optimize. I'm just going to go onto full screen now that the film has ended there. Is that idea of make a film if you've got $5,000, $10,000 or 50, but make a film that couldn't be made on 5 million. You know, it's that thing of like, make it be the best it could be, not a sort of lesser version than what you would have done if you had more money. And that's kind of, I feel like what you are both saying, which is like work within those limitations, but harness them as a power rather than a limitation. And once you do that, as you said, there's nothing you can't do in that sense, because then you're turning it on its head and you're creating something that just has to be done this way.
Yeah, because funny thing is that I don't know if it was your case, Theodore, the apartment, you know, the setting of in my short, it was, you know, we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't, you know, have do the scouting, you know, we find, you know, go to a lot other people's houses and, you know, find the spaces or everything. The first sequence that you see in the film, it's actually my grandparents' house. So I kind of took everything I had at hand and, you know, you could say that dramatize it in a way. So I don't know if it was your case, Theodore, with the apartment of your film.
Well, no, actually, in fact, at least it doesn't have a personal connection to me. A lot of the money I had, I put into an Airbnb that I discovered the day we showed up to shoot.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think that was smart. Honestly, if I could have seen it, I would have seen it. But the fact I couldn't, I just thought, okay, whatever. And we showed up and I just went, oh my God, there's stuff I wasn't ready for. Thankfully, I had someone with me who completely dismantled the TV that was on the wall. We moved the whole like furniture, whatever, and broke things. And I was thinking already, damn, this Airbnb lady is gonna be so mad at me, but whatever.
God.
And but I think what you were saying, Raúl, is you found in your location or where you were shooting already like the dramatic spark. There's something. And if it's not there, you have to kind of uncover it and dig and find it. That's how you create anything. So you can shoot anywhere, but it's like, do you really want to find, or are you ready to kind of sacrifice things to find this drama, find what's important in the story? Then I show up, see the apartment for the first time, I go, holy Jesus. And we make it work regardless. We try. That's it.
So that's the biggest lesson you take from it. Speaking of contingency then, what was something that you really had to overcome during the shoot? Tell us something that didn't quite go according to plan.
I remember on the last location, the diner. It was actually one day before Mexico's lockdown started.
Ooh.
Okay.
So I remember that our schedule was we shoot on Friday, Saturday, Sunday we rest, and on Monday we shoot. On Sunday, the first case of coronavirus was reported in Mexico.
Wow.
So I remember that, and one of our crew was in Spain 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I kind of went crazy with it. You know, I thought I'm risking people because of me. You know, and we don't know how to. There wasn't a lot of talk of prevention. You know.
Yeah.
So I remember that it was kind of the stress, the most stressful moment for me. I mean, there were times where I thought I should shut it down. You know.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I didn't.
Well, hopefully that's not something that's going to keep coming up again and again in your filmmaking careers. Let's hope.
For the sake of all of us, right?
For the sake of all of us.
Yeah.
Cigar in the chat room has put, how did you design the shots? Because some of the shots in the scene intercuts were beautiful.
There were I thought of them beforehand. Everything was storyboarded. Every aspect of the film. Yeah. And I worked closely with my photographer.
Yeah, nice.
And she has this beautiful sensitivity, and films. She sees a lot of films, and so do I. So we kind of we're influenced by a lot of things, and we thought about it, and we sat down a lot of times and talked about it. So
nice.
Yeah, everything was planned out, and that made the shooting easier.
I have
in
a
a lot
question,
of ways.
just bouncing back on that question. Raúl, what's the room over the head thing that I see in your film,
Where?
even on the poster? Not in your head right
Oh,
now,
no.
in the film. In the film, there's shots where you're shooting the character like this. In ways where purposefully it seems like there's this amount of space over.
Yes.
And even in the poster, you have this beautiful aura of orange kind of. What is that? I'm curious to know what that is.
That was decided with my photographer that we needed to have this dead space on a lot of the shots. To kind of remind the character that his father is still with him, and he's still pushing him towards,
It's beautiful. That's what
it's
I thought.
kind of that. Even though his father's gone, his presence is still there, so it kind of pushes him, and it's with him every single time, even if we don't see it.
Oh, nice.
So it's always with him.
Weighs him down. Yeah,
weighs him down, or makes him kind of asphyxiated. So it's that basically.
It's really successful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, one final question then. What we've asked the others is there anything in the pipeline at the moment, or what are you looking to in the future?
In the instant feature we're doing right now, we're developing 2 short films with my producer, again, the producer of Albatross. I will be producing his short film, and he will be producing mine. And my short film is, it also deals with family, but it in a much more. This one, I think it's a much more complex and ambitious in the sense comparing it to Albatross. And this one is about a much more about the mother and 2 sons.
Amazing.
So it's kind of that, but we don't talk about death not all in that one. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we look forward to seeing all of your projects that come next, because you've done such an amazing job on these. Thank you so much for A, sharing them with our platform over the festival, and B, coming to us today and being so open and talking about them. And there's always so much that we can learn from hearing each person's individual story with their projects and their careers. So I appreciate it so much. A big thank you to everyone who's been following in the chat, especially Cigar, who's been listening to all of this and asking lots of questions. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, Lee, Raúl. I really enjoyed your project. Really enjoyed
it.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, you too.
Oh, I can swear now.